My wife said flatly, "You're grown, feed yourself." I'm not running a diner when I got home hungry after a 14-hour shift. So I did, began taking care of myself. But she never knew that was only the start of a big change in my life. She told me to cook for myself. I did. But what she didn't realize was that I was cooking up something much bigger than dinner that night. The house was quiet, maybe too quiet, when I finally dragged myself through the front door. My shirt was plastered to my skin, slick with sweat and grime, and every muscle screamed in protest. All I wanted was a shower and a real meal, something warm that didn't come wrapped in a bar. My name is Michael, I'm 32. I work as a field technician, which means most days I'm out in the trenches, fixing industrial equipment in places like sweltering factories or noisy construction sites. My shifts? They stretch anywhere from 12 to 14 hours, depending on how bad things break down. I'm married to Jessica, she's 29, and she has two amazing kids from her previous marriage, Caleb, who's 11, and Chloe, 8. When Jessica and I first started dating 5 years ago, everything felt so right. We'd spend weekends in the kitchen, her experimenting with new recipes, me grilling steaks outside. The kids would treat setting the table like a grand adventure. We'd eat together, talk about our day, laugh at Caleb's goofy jokes, and Chloe would show off her latest drawings. It felt like the family I'd always dreamed of. 3 years ago, after we got married, Jessica decided to leave her office job and go freelance as a graphic designer. She wanted to be home more for Caleb and Chloe, and I fully supported that. I saw how much it meant to her to be there, picking them up from school, helping with homework. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to shift. My income was steady, hers fluctuated, so I naturally started covering more and more of the household expenses. The mortgage, car payments, groceries, utilities, school supplies, sports fees, everything gradually landed on my paycheck. I told myself it was temporary, that her freelance work would pick up, and we'd rebalance. Months turned into a year, then 2, and nothing changed. I didn't complain. You carry the weight for the people you love, right? But then I started noticing other things. Dinner wasn't ready when I came home anymore. Even if I texted my schedule. The house wasn't messy, not exactly, but it just felt uncared for. Like my presence didn't really matter. Jessica spent a lot of time on her laptop, which I assumed was work, but sometimes I'd catch her scrolling social media or chatting with friends while the kids watched TV. It wasn't that she wasn't busy with the kids and her projects, but it felt like I'd become invisible. Unless there was a bill to pay, or something needed fixing. Then came that Thursday in late July. I remember it vividly because it was one of those days that just breaks you down, piece by piece. I was called out at 6 a.m. to a factory 2 hours away. Their main conveyor system had completely died. The place was an oven, 95 degrees outside with no AC, just industrial fans pushing around hot air. I spent the entire day crawling under machinery, troubleshooting electrical panels, replacing burned-out motors. By the time I finished, it was almost 8 p.m. My shirt was soaked, my hands were covered in grease and small cuts. All I'd eaten was a protein bar from my truck. The drive home felt endless. All I could picture was a hot shower and a proper meal. I pulled into the driveway a little after 9, walked inside. The house was quiet, only the TV humming in the living room. Caleb and Chloe were in their rooms, probably winding down. Jessica was on the couch, laptop open. I dropped my bag and headed straight to the kitchen, hoping for leftovers. I opened the fridge. Some sandwich meat, yogurt, a sad half-eaten pizza from 2 days ago. Nothing that looked like a meal someone had saved. I just stood there, staring into the emptiness, the exhaustion sinking deep into my bones. I walked back to the living room and asked Jessica if there was anything for dinner. She didn't even glance up. "We ate at 6, she said, like I was supposed to have ESP, there's stuff in the fridge. I told her I'd just gotten home, that I'd worked 14 hours in brutal heat, and I'd really hoped for something more than sandwich supplies. That's when she finally looked at me. Her expression wasn't sympathetic. It was annoyed. "You're an adult," she said, her voice cold. "Cook for yourself. I'm not running a restaurant." Those words hit me like a physical blow. I just stood there, waiting for her to backtrack, to soften. To say she didn't mean it that way. But she just went back to her laptop, signaling the conversation was over. I didn't say another word. I turned, went back to the kitchen, and made myself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, like I was 10 years old again. I ate it standing at the counter, and with each bite, I felt something crack inside me. Some fundamental assumption about what marriage was supposed to be. I thought about my own parents. My dad worked construction his whole life, long, hard physical labor. And my mom always had dinner ready for him. Not because she had to, not because he demanded it. But because she cared. She wanted to take care of him after a long, exhausting day. It wasn't about old-fashioned roles, it was about love, about consideration. About seeing your partner work themselves to the bone and wanting to ease their burden. That's what I thought Jessica and I had. That kind of partnership. But standing there with that pathetic sandwich, I realized I'd been fooling myself. When was the last time she'd asked about my day and actually listened? When had she done something just to make me happy? I couldn't remember. The scariest thought wasn't the cold dinner or the harsh words. It was the question that came right after them: was I just a paycheck to her? Was I just the guy who kept the lights on and the mortgage paid while she lived the life she wanted? I didn't have an answer that night. But I knew, deep down, something had fundamentally shifted. I finished my sandwich, took a long shower, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Jessica slept beside me like nothing had happened. "You're an adult. Cook for yourself." Her words echoed in my head. And I realized she was right about one thing. I was an adult. And maybe it was time I started acting like one by taking care of myself. Because clearly, nobody else in this house was going to do it. I just didn't know yet that taking care of myself was going to look very different from what she expected. The next morning, I woke up with this strange clarity, like my brain had processed everything while I slept and delivered a conclusion. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg for her attention or care. I was just going to do exactly what she told me, take care of myself. If she wanted to treat me like a roommate who paid all the bills, then fine. I'd act like one. That Friday, I left for work before anyone else was awake. On my way home, I stopped at the grocery store and bought food just for me. Things I actually liked that nobody else in the house ever touched. Good steaks, fresh vegetables, the expensive coffee I usually skipped, some craft beer I'd been wanting to try. When I got home around 7 p.m., Jessica and the kids had already eaten. She was back on the couch with her laptop. I didn't ask about dinner, didn't say a word. I just went to the kitchen and started cooking. I seasoned a thick ribeye, got a cast iron pan smoking hot, and cooked it perfectly, medium rare, with a gorgeous crust. Roasted asparagus with garlic, a loaded baked potato, the whole thing. The aroma filled the house. Caleb peeked into the kitchen. "That smells really good," he said. "What are you making?" I told him, "Just dinner for myself. Nothing special." Jessica appeared in the doorway a minute later. I could feel her watching as I plated everything. "You made steak?" she asked, a hint of surprise in her voice. "Yeah," I said casually, "I was hungry after work." She waited, like she expected me to offer some. I didn't. I just grabbed my plate, a beer from the fridge, and went to eat in my small office, my designated space. I heard her go back to the living room without another word. Saturday morning, I made myself a real breakfast. Scrambled eggs with cheese, bacon, toast, fresh orange juice, the kind of breakfast I used to make for everyone on weekends. Jessica came into the kitchen while I was eating, still in her pajamas. She looked at the pan I'd already washed and put away. "You made breakfast?" she asked. For myself? Yeah, I said, taking another bite. There's eggs and stuff in the fridge if you want to make some. She just stood there for a second, her brain visibly churning. You're not making any for us? She asked, an edge now in her voice. I looked at her calmly and repeated her exact words from 2 nights ago. You're an adult, I said. Cook for yourself. Her face went through 3 distinct phases: shock, anger, then a forced neutrality, like she wouldn't give me the satisfaction of a reaction. She grabbed a yogurt and left without another word. That's when I knew things were about to get interesting. Later, Caleb and Chloe asked if I wanted to go to the community pool. I told them I had errands, which was true. I needed to go to the hardware store. But the real reason was to establish I wasn't automatically available for family activities anymore. Not when nobody seemed to care if I was included or not. Sunday evening, Jessica announced she was taking Caleb and Chloe to a movie. She didn't ask if I wanted to come, just stated they were going. Okay, have fun, I said, and texted my buddy Daniel to see if he wanted to grab dinner and watch the game. We had a great time, wings, beer, just talking normal stuff. And I didn't think about home once for those 3 hours. When I got back around 9:30, Jessica was waiting in the living room, arms crossed. You went out? She asked, like I'd committed a crime. Yeah, you guys went to the movies, so I met up with Daniel. We didn't invite you to the movies because you never want to see kids' films, her voice rising. I thought maybe we could all do something together as a family tonight. I just looked at her. You planned the movie without asking me. You didn't mention anything about doing something together afterward. How was I supposed to know? She had no answer. She just turned and went to the bedroom. This became the pattern for the next week. Monday, I came home, made dinner for myself, ate alone. Tuesday, Jessica tried to make a nice dinner for everyone, including me, like she was trying to prove a point. It felt forced and awkward. Wednesday, I started doing my own laundry separately, just my clothes, leaving everyone else's in the hamper. Thursday, Jessica asked me to pick up Caleb from soccer. I told her I had plans, which I did, a long-delayed dentist appointment. She had to rearrange her entire afternoon. She was furious. You never used to be like this, she said that night. Like what? I asked. Available? That's because I used to think I was part of a team, I told her. Now I realize I'm just the money guy who occasionally gets asked to do favors. Friday night, things escalated. I'd been tracking our joint bank account more carefully. Before, I just assumed we were both responsible adults. But looking at the statements from the past 6 months, a pattern emerged that made my stomach churn. Hair salon appointments, new clothes, expensive skincare, subscription boxes, frequent takeout on days I wasn't home, all on the joint account. The account I deposited my entire paycheck into. Meanwhile, Jessica's freelance income went directly to her personal account, which I had no access to. There were charges for the kids, which was fine, they needed things. But absolutely nothing was ever spent on me, unless I bought it myself. Not a birthday gift, not a surprise dinner, not even my favorite snacks or a book I'd mentioned wanting. I sat there, looking at the numbers, doing the math. I realized I'd been funding someone else's comfortable lifestyle while I lived like a broke college kid, saving every penny. The joint account was basically just my account, that other people spent from. Jessica had her money tucked away, while mine evaporated on everyone's needs but my own. I opened a separate checking account that Saturday. Went to the bank in person, set everything up. Starting the following week, I'd deposit just enough into the joint account to cover my share of the actual household bills, mortgage, utilities, groceries. The rest would go into my own account. When Jessica asked why I was at the bank so long, I told her I was looking into investment options. Which wasn't technically a lie. I was investing in my own financial independence. That Sunday, I spent most of the day in the garage, organizing my tools. Caleb came out to help for a while, handing me wrenches, asking questions about how things worked. It was the best conversation I'd had with anyone in the house for weeks. He didn't want anything from me except my time and attention. And I realized that's all I'd ever wanted from Jessica, too. Chloe brought me a drawing she'd made of our family. In the picture, I was standing slightly apart from everyone else. Not intentionally, I think, just the way an 8-year-old naturally draws what she observes. I taped it to my toolbox, and this heavy sadness settled over me. Even the kids could see I didn't really belong anymore. That night, lying in bed with Jessica on the far side of the mattress like we were strangers, a thought wouldn't leave me alone. In this house, in this family, I wasn't a husband, a partner, or even truly a parent figure to Caleb and Chloe. Despite 3 years of trying, I was just a provider. A financial resource. Someone who kept the machine running, but wasn't actually part of the life that machine supported. Every interaction had become transactional. Every request was really a demand. Every day was me showing up to fund a life I wasn't truly included in. I thought about Jessica's earlier phrase, "You never used to be like this." And she was right. I never used to have boundaries. I never used to question where my money went or whether I was valued beyond my paycheck. I never used to expect basic consideration or care. I just gave and gave, hoping someone would notice and appreciate it. But that's not how it works. People don't appreciate what they don't value. And Jessica had made it crystal clear that the only thing she valued about me was my ability to keep paying for everything. The man behind the paycheck, the guy who worked 14-hour shifts in 95-degree heat, the husband who just wanted someone to care if he came home exhausted and hungry. That person was invisible to her. The worst part? I let it happen. I trained her to treat me this way, accepting less and less until there was almost nothing left. But I was done training her. Done hoping things would magically improve. Done being invisible in my own home. I was a financial sponsor for someone else's life. And that painful realization finally gave me the clarity I needed to figure out what came next. That Monday morning, I called a family law attorney, Mark Reynolds, during my lunch break. He came highly recommended. He agreed to see me that Wednesday. I left work early and drove to his office downtown. He was straightforward, no sugarcoating. We talked about the marriage, the finances, the kids. When I explained Caleb and Chloe weren't biologically mine, he nodded, like he'd heard it 1,000 times. The good news hit me like a wave of relief I hadn't known I needed. My financial exposure was limited. The house was in my name only, my parents had given the down payment as a wedding gift to me, and I'd been paying the mortgage alone. Jessica's freelance income went to her separate account, while I'd been depositing everything into our joint one. Attorney Reynolds said this worked in my favor. I could demonstrate inequitable contribution given the marriage was under 5 years, no biological children together, and the financial imbalance. I was looking at a clean separation. I sat in my truck for 20 minutes afterward, just letting it sink in. This was real now. I could end this marriage without being financially destroyed. The question wasn't whether I could leave anymore. It was whether I should. I decided to give it one last honest conversation. That Saturday, I asked Jessica to talk without the kids around. She got defensive immediately but agreed. We sent Caleb and Chloe to her mom's and sat at the kitchen table. I laid everything out. The loneliness of brutal hours and coming home to indifference. Being treated like an ATM, carrying all the financial weight while she kept her income separate. Becoming invisible unless a bill needed paying. I wasn't yelling, just explaining my reality. Jessica listened, but her face hardened. When I finished, she told me I was overly sensitive, that she had a lot on her plate with kids and work. She said I chose my job, nobody forced me, and tried to make the cooking incident sound ridiculous. I felt something cold settle in my chest. I explained I wasn't upset about making dinner. I was upset about what it represented, the complete lack of care. She rolled her eyes, actually rolled her eyes. And I knew this conversation was pointless. But I had to ask one last question. What am I to you, Jessica? What am I besides the money? She opened her mouth, then stopped. The pause stretched out. 10 seconds. 20. Finally, she spoke. You're a good provider. The way she said it, like that was supposed to be enough. It told me everything. Not a husband. Not a partner. Just a provider. I pulled out the divorce papers and set them on the table. Her face went white. I told her I was filing for divorce. That I couldn't be married to someone who only saw me as a bank account. She started crying, said we could fix this, that she could change. I reminded her I'd given her 3 years of chances. If I have to force you to love me, I said, then it's not real. She kept crying, but I'd heard enough empty promises. The next weeks were tense. I moved to the spare bedroom. Jessica alternated between playing the perfect wife and being angry. The kids knew something was wrong. One night, Caleb asked if I was moving out. I sat with him and Chloe and explained that Jessica and I had grown-up problems and needed to live separately. Chloe asked if they'd done something wrong, and I assured them this wasn't about them, that I still cared. Caleb asked if they'd still see me, and I promised absolutely. 2 months later, the divorce was finalized. A quick process, nothing to fight over. The house was mine. Jessica moved out with the kids. She tried one last time the day before leaving, dressed up, talking about reservations at the restaurant from our first date. I looked at her and felt only exhaustion. What we had ended a long time ago. I just finally accepted it. She left the next day, and the house went quiet. That was 6 months ago. I got promoted to senior technician with normal hours. Started going to the gym, reconnected with old friends. Caleb and Chloe come over every other weekend, and it's genuinely good without the tension. Last week, Daniel asked if I was ready to date again. I told him maybe. But this time, I'd never forget something important. The moment someone tells you to take care of yourself, believe them. They've already stopped caring. I spent 3 years hoping Jessica would see me, and she never did, because she didn't want to. She wanted a provider, nothing more. Next time, I'll look for someone who wants to be a partner, someone who shows up because they want to. And if I never see that reciprocity, I won't waste years hoping it will appear. I'll walk away early, while I still have enough of myself left to build something better. That's the lesson I learned the hard way. But at least I learned it. Do you think I was wrong to walk away?